In the earlier video, we looked at the challenges when you want to match multiple traces captured at different points in a network, and how do we match it up, handling all things like clock synchronization issues and then all the different types of translations that might occur. And this is really the forte for TraceMatcher. So let's take a look at a particular example. In this example, I have a PC here, and I'm capturing on the PC, and then I have a web server over the other side of the internet. The web server is running both a straight HTTP type server and also an SSL server. In between, we have two types of network address translation, source and destination. And then we also have TCP segmentation offload on the server. Now, all of these different things in one way or another fiddle with the packets and the headers. That makes matching them more challenging. It can be done manually. I've been doing it manually for years, but it's very time consuming. And what we'll see is that with TraceMatcher, we can do it with the press of a button. So let's skip over to TraceMatcher. And I'm going to load up a slightly different set of files. I'm going to load these two here. And these are the two files that were taken at those 2 points we saw earlier in the slide. So the first thing I have to do is scan these files. Scanning simply pulls information out of the files, and it pulls out the characteristics of the packets so that they can be matched. But you can see that scanning in this case took less than half a second actually in both cases, so it's pretty quick. Now to match, we simply press the match button, we drag the files into the correct containers, and then we can simply run a match. We have to also set a matching profile. So these are the characteristics that will be used to match the packets between these 2 points in the network. Now this is particularly challenging because if you remember, we only have captures at each end of the network. We don't have any intermediate points, so it would be far easier for the tool to match between this point and say here, and then match between this point and then here. But we're using some fairly extreme, this is a fairly extreme example of the capability. Okay, so we've got that. We've pulled up the match profile, and you can set up match profiles, and we'll be providing default profiles and profiles for different scenarios as well. So let's run the match. Now this new dialog box here, which you won't have seen before, this is giving you information about how successful the match was. We can see that we've matched 923 packets out of almost 2,500, and also it tells you about how unique was the match. So if you used match criteria that were too loose and so started to match multiple packets together, then this number here would drop, but you can see that this looks pretty good. So let's now look at the data. Now the first thing is, bearing in mind that this is capture point 2, you can see to start with we don't have data for capture point 2. Now the reason is because we're actually interested in traffic that's going to this web server. But mixed in with the traffic that we want to see, we also see traffic going to another server just here, 216 address. So solving that problem is pretty easy. We just grab this address by a copy with Control-C. We place that into the filter and we apply the filter. And now we're seeing everything that's associated with that web server. Now the thing you'll note here, if we look at the capture point times, you can see that the time here is 14:25:45, but the time over here is 14:20:27. So it looks to me as though the packets have gone back in time by about 5 minutes, as it says here, 5 minutes 18 seconds. And we've seen this in another video. You have the option in TraceMatcher to ask TraceMatcher to simply adjust the time, and so you can click a button and it snaps everything into time synchronized mode. But I'm going to continue without it being time synchronized for the moment. So now we have this new feature that enables you to not just shell out into Wireshark, but also to jump in that trace file to the correct place. So we've got the trace file here, we know the name of the trace file, but if I right click on frame number 729 and I start Wireshark, it jumps straight to 729. So we've got the whole trace file open, but we've gone straight to the correct point. So that's fairly neat, and that saves some time. The other things that are still there are things like CSV export, so we can export this grid into a comma separated variable format file for easy manipulation in Excel. And we can also hide columns. So we can simply go in here and hide some of the columns that maybe we're not that interested in. And if we want to reveal them again, we simply go into the displayed columns and we reveal the column again, much as you do with Wireshark actually.